Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Etavan eva lokesmin Pumsam dharma parasmritaha Bhakti yoga bhagavati Tannama grahanadibihi Etavan eva lokesmin Pumsam dharma parasmritaha Bhakti yoga bhagavati Tannama grahanadibihi Etavan eva lokesmin Pumsam dharma parasmritaha Bhakti yogo bhagavati Tannama grahanadibihi Apologies. Okay, word for word. Etavan, this much. Eva, indeed. Loke asmin, in this material world. Pumsam, of the living entities. Dharma, the religious principles. Paraha, transcendental. Smritaha, recognized. Bhakti yogaha, bhakti yoga or devotional service. Bhagavati, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not to the demigods. Tat, his. Nama, of the holy name. Grahana adibihi, beginning with the chanting. Translation. Devotional service beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the ultimate religious principle for the living entities in human society. Purport. As stated in the previous verse, Dharmam Bhagavatam, real religious principles are Bhagavad Dharma, the principles described in the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, or in the Bhagavad Gita, the preliminary study of the Bhagavatam. What are these principles? The Bhagavatam says, Dharma projita kaitavotra. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are no cheating religious systems. Everything in the Bhagavatam is directly connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavatam further says, Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adokshaje. The supreme religion is that which teaches its followers how to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond the reach of experimental knowledge. Such a religious system begins with Tannama Grahana, chanting of the holy name of the Lord, Shravana, Kirtana, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, etc. After chanting the holy name of the Lord and dancing in ecstasy, one gradually sees the form of the Lord, the pastimes of the Lord, and the transcendental qualities of the Lord. This way, one fully understands the situation of the personality of Godhead. One can come to this understanding of the Lord, how he descends into the material world, how he takes his birth, and what activity he performs. But one can know this only by executing devotional service. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktya mam abhijanati. Simply by devotional service, one can understand everything about the Supreme Lord. If one fortunately understands the Supreme Lord in this way, the result is tyaktva deham punarjanma. After giving up his material body, he no longer has to take birth in this material world. Instead, he returns home, back to Godhead. That is the ultimate perfection. Therefore, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8:15, Mam upetya punarjanma dukhalayam asashvatam napnuvanti mahatmanam samsiddhim paramam gataha. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Indradumna Swaminiti Namine Namo Prabhupada Pridasaya Jagannatha Yatrananda Murtaye Bhakta Sukhena Krishna Kirtanena Narasimhena Rakshataya Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Mukam Kuroti Vachalam Pangulam Gayate Girim Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam. Okay, so I'm giving class after a long time, so please forgive any misconceptions or mispronunciations or mistake I might make, and correct me promptly, please. So today's verse is a very beautiful verse, and Subal Prahu selected it because soon we'll have a little bit of a seminar happening about the glories of Sankirtan, about the glories of the holy name, and the glories of devotional service. Correct, Prahu? Yes. So today is just the introduction into the whole mood of the week, I guess, while different guest speakers will be here speaking on these topics. So this purport, or this sloka, is something like a sutra. Or within it, there's so many other meanings and purports you can take out of every single line of Prabhupada's purport, because it's so full of, how would I say, facts or essential points in which you can take out so many different meanings, yeah? Hey, bunny. So, first we have to understand the scene. What is happening now in the story of Srimad Bhagavatam? So in the story of Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand that now is when Yamaraj is explaining to his Yamadutas why the Vishnu Dutas came and took Ajamil. Yeah, they're completely bewildered. They don't understand. This person did so many bad things. Chitragupta, the person who is writing all the bad activities, ran out of ink. Right? He couldn't keep writing all the sinful activities that Ajamil was performing. So how come he went back to Godhead? How come the Vishnudutas came and took him back to Godhead? It doesn't make sense to them. And so Yamaraj, he is describing to the Yamadutas the glories of the holy name, the glories of devotional service, and how we should respect or treat such devotees. And after Yamaraj finishes speaking, Sutta Goswami goes into even more detail talking about the glories of the holy name and devotional service. So it's a very beautiful chapter. And so at this point, he's describing the glories of devotional service and how it is supreme above all other kinds of so-called religious activities that one can perform. Does that make sense? Yeah, so there's so many activities one can perform that to the Yamadutas would make sense. This is a good person, this is a bad person. But because devotional service is well beyond all of that, then they're confused. And so Dhammaraj is explaining to them these principles, yes? So in the beginning of the purport, Prabhupada points out that the Bhagavatam says, Dharma projita kaitavotra. That verse, right, which is Srimad Bhagavatam 1:1-2, is basically explaining what the Srimad Bhagavatam is about. And Prabhupada points out how it doesn't have any cheating religions, right? Any cheating systems, it says. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are no cheating religious systems. What does Prabhupada mean by that? Why would the Shastras give cheating religious systems? Or why are there such a thing as cheating religious systems in the Shastra? And that is because Krishna understood that there's two types of people in this world. Those who want enjoyment and those who want to get out of this material world. So those who want to enjoy and those who don't. So there's two different systems in the Shastras that are described. Just like in a manual, when you get a machine, there's different ways you should use the machine and different ways that if you use it, something bad might happen, right? So in the Shastras, everything is described. Krishna gives a complete manual for this material world. He doesn't only give the way in which to get out. He said, if you do want enjoyment, you can follow these principles, you can do these different things. That's why even in the Atharva Veda, black magic is described, animal sacrifice is described, different ways to control different beings and spirits in very horrible ways is described, because Krishna knew that there will be people who will be interested in that, and so at least they can follow the proper system. This idea of the scientists of trial and error, Krishna took that out. It's not needed. You have the Shastra, you follow it. Whatever you want is there in the Shastra. Whatever result you might desire, Krishna tells how to get it. Yeah, so it's not simply by trial and error. Someone tried chanting this mantra in this way, and then in this way. In one way it worked, and one way it didn't work, so he wrote it down, and everyone from then on knew how to chant it. It wasn't like that. Yeah, some person wasn't chanting the Maha Mantra in a different way, and then all of a sudden it didn't work, and then he said, okay, this way didn't work. So they tried millions of different ways of chanting, and then at a certain time they wrote it down. It wasn't like that. And Prabhupada describes, right? In the Bhagavatam, he very clearly describes that this Vedic knowledge, this devotional service is beyond the scientific experimental method. It's not going to work that way. He very clearly describes that. So in this first verse, the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam 1:1-2, the verse goes, Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapa trayo mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni kim va parairishvara sadyo hridya varudyate trakritibi shushrusubhis tatskshanat, right? Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion and from welfare of all. So it's distinguished from illusion. Yeah, so it's not about anymore just continuing in this material world, continuing to do good activities to get good results or anything of that. It's distinguished, it's separate from that. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of the Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. So this is a very important point at the end. As soon as one attentively and submissively hears. This brings into the point Bhagavad Gita 4:34, right? Tadviddi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, right? If one does not come to the spiritual master in a submissive mentality, in a submissive attitude, and render service, right? Then the truth of the knowledge or the true meaning of the knowledge and the utility of that knowledge will not come to his heart. We hear this again and again, and we see so many different purports or stories that show this principle that is so important. The story of Karna always comes up, right? He served the Bhishma very nicely to get the knowledge of the different weapons. Not Bhishma, sorry, Parashuram. Right? But in the end, because he was cheating his spiritual master, saying that he was a Brahmana when he was actually a Kshatriya, Parashuram told him, I taught you all this, but when you really need it, you won't be able to use it. So what was the point of all his learning? We come to Bhagavatam class every day, we read Srimad Bhagavatam all the time, and do we have that submissive attitude? Do we have that surrendered attitude where we can truly understand all the purports that Srila Prabhupada is telling us, that our Guru is trying to explain to us, unless we come with that culture of knowledge that Prabhupada points out? Then it is not possible, right? In the purport to that verse in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, increase and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. So even if the spiritual master is perfectly qualified and supremely qualified, a pure devotee, if there's not submission and service in your inquiries, in your attitude, you will not be able to properly understand and properly realize the knowledge that you're getting. You may theoretically understand, right? Here, Prabhupada's, the whole purport, he's talking about only by devotional service is one able to understand Krishna's activities, how he took birth. Everyone here knows how he took birth. I can ask any one of you and you'll say, yes, he took birth in the jail. Vasudev took him to Vrindavan, exchanged him with the daughter of Yashoda. You all know, theoretically, how he was born. But what was the purpose, the true meaning? Does it give you pure love of God as soon as you hear these pastimes? No, because we haven't realized it. We haven't truly understood it. So there's a great difference between simply understanding something as a fact or truly imbibing and realizing this knowledge. And that only comes through the culture of knowledge. So that's the importance of this verse. And then, further in the purport, Prabhupada points out, in this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. Blind following, Prabhupada condemns it here in the purport, in the verse. That means, do you hear something, every day you should do this, every day you should do that, or, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead because this, and you don't understand it fully, but you just accept it because of laziness. Not because of submission, not because of surrender, because of laziness is a difference. And why is laziness there? Because it's unimportant to you. What is important? Material enjoyment. How is this going to benefit me? I'm here in the temple because it's easy living, nice place to sleep, nice people to talk to, nice prasadam, nice place, nice scenery, nice mountains. So what actually is going on and what we're trying to understand isn't of importance. So Krishna's God, okay. But that's lazy. That's not pure, that's not surrender. Right? To the Brajbasis, when they tell Krishna is God, they say, wonderful. But that's not what is important to me. Krishna is my friend. That's what is important to me. There's a big difference. They fully accept and they fully understand, but they're already at a higher level. We are not at that level. So when someone tells us something important, that something simple, right? That only by devotional service can one understand Krishna, do we just like, oh yes, I've heard that before? Or do we actually think, how? What does it mean to understand Krishna then? How come only by devotional service can one understand Krishna? That doesn't make sense to me if you actually think about it. And then you'll read more, you'll ask more questions in a submissive attitude, and then you'll really understand the knowledge. Right? So it's so important that we really understand this verse, what Prabhupada is trying to tell us, right? Not only should one hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one should also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service of his inquiries, right? A clear understanding. If one doesn't understand something, you ask again. You still don't understand something, you ask again and again and again. But Prabhupada clearly points out, no absurd inquiries. What does that mean, absurd inquiries? Right? Some time ago, someone was asking me, I forgot what it was. in what relation it was. But basically, they were trying to understand the process in which rituals are done in our society or in general. And so they were looking at it from a very scientific point of view, that there must have been at some point someone experimenting and figured out that this system worked. And unless he got that specific type of answer, he wasn't satisfied with the answers because it didn't make sense in a scientific sort of way to him, right? So this is something of, this is when you have that line of questioning, it's usually because someone is challenging the entire field of knowledge as a whole, thinking that is it even worth learning? Because how did they come to this conclusion? What's the point of chanting Gayatri? They're not asking how it benefits, they're asking about who figured out that Gayatri works, and what proof is there that Gayatri works? Understand? So the whole system of asking was in the wrong direction. And when I pointed that out, it was very clear to the person that, yeah, my mind was completely challenging. I wanted a scientific answer of why deity worship works. And who figured out that it works. And how are you supposed to tell if it works or not when you're doing it? In a scientific, immediately, like you offer a lamp and does the fire turn off as if you're not doing it properly? Or is there some, physical reciprocation? So that was a very challenging mentality. So the proper knowledge can only be received if one is submissively, open-heartedly asking. If one doesn't understand, one shouldn't blindly follow. He should ask more questions until it's clear to him. But with a submissive attitude, one is open to the answers and can actually think about it and understand it. Right? So the Srimad Bhagavatam, very clearly in the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, is dispelling any ideas that are saying that Srimad Bhagavatam is not about that. It is only about pure devotional service. So we come back to the original point. Why is Prabhupada describing it as cheating systems? Why is it considered a cheating system? Because it is keeping us away of what actually is real. You go to a store and you tell the person, I want pure rose oil. Anyone who's been to India knows this story. It probably happened to them 10 times, right? I want pure rose oil. And he'll show you something and say, this is the best. And you smell it and it smells like you could light it on fire just with the sunlight. There's so much alcohol inside. And you tell him, this is not pure rose oil. Show me the pure stuff. And then he'll show you something else that's diluted in sandalwood oil. Say, no, I want the pure stuff. And you'll have to go and ask him again and again and again until he finally shows you some small little bottle he has that he didn't want to sell because he got it from his great-grandfather and is very, very special. Right? And then you have to convince him to sell you that, and then you have to bargain with him the price. So that's a whole separate thing. But you think about this, that the Vedas are full of these flowery words and descriptions of what you will achieve by doing different sacrifices. But the true purpose of the Vedas is hidden. Only for those who are really looking for it are you able to find it. And that is love of God, devotional service, getting out of this material world. And it seems so simple when you find it, but we don't understand that what is the price? The price is all of our desires. We have to understand that there's nothing that we should desire separate from Krishna's happiness. Even leaving this material world in the ultimate sense is our own selfish desire. That's why the great devotees say, let me stay here another 1,000,000 births if I'm able to do service to you. Because it really doesn't matter as long as whatever Krishna wants is fulfilled. Right? So it's the highest price. Just like we were describing that you're going to hear something and then you just accept it, blindly accept it, okay, out of laziness. Why? Because you're holding on to your own material desires. You're holding on to your own desires thinking that that is what's important. And therefore, nothing else has a chance to enter into your mind. It's not important, right? Sometimes you'll see you're describing, some devotee comes and asks you about something, how you did this, how you do that. And you go into a little bit of a greater principle of Jai Nrsimhadev Bhagavan Ki Jai, into a greater principle of the importance of it. and you see their mind just go blank, right? It's just like you're talking to a wall, because what they wanted to hear is not what you're telling them, right? So that's what we do to ourselves. As soon as it starts getting something in the way of our material desires, we go blank. And nothing else has a chance to enter into our realization. So if you come in a submissive mentality, really believing that you know nothing, you're hearing everything for the first time, everything that you're going to hear from your spiritual master is of utmost importance. Doesn't matter how simple it is. Right? We are not this body. Yeah, I've heard that before. How many times have we heard that? I heard that on the first day. Right? There was a few years ago, it sticks in my memory, and I've probably said this story before, that there was Prabhupada's disappearance day in Mayapur. And so many devotees were telling very elevated stories and realizations and descriptions of the spiritual world and how Prabhupada must be serving the Lord and one day we'll be there and so many different things. And it was getting a little bit advanced. I remember even for us, we were kids and we were kind of like, I don't know about this, right? I must have been 9 or 10. And then Shatadanya Prabhu came. I don't know if you know him, but Shatadanya Prabhu was a Swami in Prabhupada's time and very heavy, very powerful preacher. And so he came to the mic and he started, Srila Prabhupada, I'm happy to inform you that after 50 plus years in the movement, I'm still trying my very hardest to realize I'm not this body. And I'm trying day by day to realize this most important fact. And his whole offering, it was a long offering, was talking about how he's trying his best to understand that he's not this body. And it made us realize, and until today it sticks in my mind, the importance of that simple instruction. But we hear it every day. We take it for granted. Yes, I'm not this body. But if you realize that, you wouldn't be in this material world anymore. You would be liberated. If you realize you're not this body, it means you realize you're the spirit soul. It means you realized your eternal relationship with the Lord. Congratulations. You have achieved Siddha Swarup. And until that point, when someone tells us we're not this body, we shouldn't just take it for granted. And actually think, yes, whatever I'm doing right now, am I doing it in connection to the body, or am I only doing it for the pleasure of the Lord? So in a submissive attitude, when the Guru will tell you you're not this body, you're going to think about it. You're going to realize it. There's a story with my Guru Maharaj also that he had the great fortune to travel with Srila Prabhupada one time to Paris. And someone other, the servant, Pradyumna Prabhu, was held back in customs. And so he walked alone with Srila Prabhupada going towards the boarding. And Prabhupada mentioned to him, Gurudev was trying to grab his bags and Prabhupada's bags and trying to focus and act like a devotee in front of Prabhupada. And so then Prabhupada told them, just see these people with no knowledge of the spiritual world, with no knowledge of anything. They're simply engrossed in this material world, trying to enjoy. Do you understand? And my Gurudev said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I understand. Just kind of out of the back of his head, I understand. Yeah, yes, Srila Prabhupada, yeah. And we keep walking another few meters, and Prabhupada said, just see these people, no good qualities, only engrossed in self-enjoyment. Do you understand, Indrajumna? And my Gurudev again, yes, Srila Prabhupada, yes, yes. And a third time, Prabhupada said, just see, no good qualities. But if we imbibe the spiritual spark, devotion to the Lord, then all good qualities will come. Do you understand? And on the third time, my Gurudev was like, yes, I understand. Prabhupada knew that he wasn't listening. Prabhupada knew he wasn't understanding, so he said 3 times in a row. And on the third time, my Gurudev said it was like, it actually clicked. Yes, they have no good qualities because they're so engrossed in material enjoyment, thinking of nothing else but their immediate gratification. But if we imbibe the spark of devotion within them, then all good qualities will come. And he understood. So when he was able to surrender and to actually submissively listen, then it activated. It was the same instruction 3 times given. Yeah, so this purport, everything here in the purport we have read many times. Everything here in the purport is described in the purport of 1:1-2. And this is the 6th canto. You look at the purports of the 2 verses, and there's Prabhupada quotes the 2 verses right here. So he's repeating it again and again and again, in the hopes that we will actually click and be like, yes, it makes sense. We don't want any of these cheating systems. We only want devotional service. And only by devotional service can one understand Krishna. That's the whole meaning. But we still don't understand it, because we have our own desires in the way. So this is one of the points that are here in the purport. Then if we go later, Prabhupada goes into greater detail describing the different kinds of things that the Vedas are describing or teaching us. Right? There's 2 main systems. You have Pravritti Marg, which keeps you in this material world. Pravritti Marg, right? And Nivritti Marg, which is the process of renunciation. And there's many processes of renunciation that the Vedas given. All different ways in which we can get out of this material world. And we see those religions, right? Buddhism, yeah? They're trying to get out of this material world. The Mayavadis, trying to merge with Brahman, right? Then you have all these other margs also. You have Madhvacharya Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya. They're all already coming closer and closer to pure devotional service. And they can be. But what is missing is that sweetness of Vrindavan that only Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given. Right? So it's all different. Everyone's looking at the scope of Nivritti Marg with different visions. And just yesterday in the kitchen, we were listening with Manuel, right? There was the description, one Prabhupada disciple, when he came to the movement, he was questioned by his Islamic friends that this is all haram, right? They were seeing the pictures he had in his locker. He was in high school, of all the different, Nrsingadev, all the different avatars and different pictures of Krishna. And they were saying, this is nonsense. This is haram. And so he was 16 years old. He heard a few Bhagavatam classes and he was like, okay, let's go for it. Let's discuss. And so he brought up an amazing point, he told them. He said, your father, if you ask your mother, he'll say that I know your father a certain way, and there's certain things about him that only I know. Then the son will be able to say the same thing, that no, my father is this. And I call him Papa, Dad. The mom maybe calls him a sweetheart, my dear, right? Then the grandma will say something else. Say, no, I cleaned his diapers. I know him a different way. He's a rascal, right? Then his workers at the shop will say, no, my boss, he's a nice person. He comes on time. He gives me my bonuses, right? So everyone knows your dad 6, 7 different ways, and they may call him 6, 7 different things. Mr. Simpson, he might be at the work. The mother will call him dear. The grandma will call him Pookie or whatever name he gave when he was a baby, right? So if your dad can be understood by 6 different people 6 different ways and have 6 different names, are you telling me that Allah, the great God, can only be understood one way and only have one name? Right? And they were completely stumped. They couldn't give any answer to that. Because if God is all great, he should be much greater than my dad. Right? So all these different processes, they're all seeing the Lord in a certain function, in a certain part. But very clearly in the purport, it says that the highest religion is one that brings you to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Teaches you how to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then we come to question, then how come our religion, how come Krishna consciousness is considered the highest? How come our form of devotional service is considered the highest? And that is because Krishna himself says so. In so many different places. He says that this form of devotion is most pleasing to me. Pure devotional service, deprived of any feelings of awe and reverence. That is what's most pleasing to me. Right? We hear very clearly this pastime again and again and again. And very recently, right, in the pastime of Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami, when he went to the house of Damodar Chobe, where he was taking care of Madan Mohan, right, he saw how they were dealing with the deity. The mother, We call her Mrs. Chobe. My Guru Maharaj always says Mrs. Chobe because we don't know her name. Mrs. Chobe. She used to put them both to sleep together. Madan Mohan and her son. Used to put them sleep together, cover them with the same blanket, and tap them to sleep, singing lullabies. When it was time for prasadam, all the plates would be put, and Krishna would have his plate, the son would have his plate, Damodar Prabhu would have his plate. Everybody ate together. When anything was happening, it was such a family attitude. The famous story goes that she was boiling milk in the morning. And if you go to Braj, you'll see this very often. They boil the milk first thing in the morning. And sometimes because they're busy, they weren't able to take bath or, do everything first. So she was brushing her teeth with a neem twig, with a stick, right? Brushing her teeth. And the milk was boiling. And the milk started overflowing. So she quickly grabbed her toothbrush, the twig, and with the other side, she quickly stirred the milk so it wouldn't overboil. Sanatana Goswami saw that. And then she offered that to Madan Mohan and her son and her husband, cups of milk. And Sanatana Goswami was thinking, this is madness. But what was her thought? If the milk overboils, Madan Mohan won't have milk. He will go hungry. How will he play? How will he have strength? So her thought process was way beyond what Sanatana Goswami was thinking about rules and regulations. So what did Sanatana Goswami do? With great love and care, he talked to Mrs. Chobe and to Damodar Chobe and explained the processes of devotional service. He only had good intentions. But that very night, Madan Mohan came in the dream of Sanatana Goswami and got in his case. He said, you've ruined the good environment I had in the house of Damodar Chobe. Now they treat me with awe and reverence and with worship, and they keep me at a distance. I don't eat with them anymore. I don't sleep with them anymore. They're, putting me to sleep first. They give me everything first, right? He didn't like that anymore. And so he said, you've messed it up, so now you have to take care of me. So he went. Ultimately, it was the desire of the Lord. But this pastime shows us that that is what Krishna enjoys the most. Awe and reverence and all of this is for us to be purified. But what he likes the most is the close love and dealings of his followers, of his devotees. Right? So the process of devotional service that takes, the religion that takes us to that level of devotional service, of that level of love of God, is the highest. And therefore we can say with conviction that Krishna consciousness that was given by Mahaprabhu is the highest process. It doesn't take away anything from other processes that propagate pure love of God. Right? It's just perfect, more perfect, and most perfect. Right? Prabhupada always gives this analogy. Right? We see in Brihad Bhagavatamrita when Narada Muni is looking for the highest, greatest devotee of the Lord, and he's going through everyone, right? Indra, Brahma, Shiva, Hanuman, Prahlad Maharaj. All of them are glorifying someone else. But do they change their relationship with the Lord because they know someone else has something higher? No. Hanuman is glorifying the Pandavas and describing how they sit with the Lord and they eat with the Lord and they joke with the Lord. And Arjuna calls him my friend, right? Calls him so many different names, even calls him my charioteer. To Hanuman, this is unthinkable with his relationship with Ram. But he's glorifying it because he can appreciate that it's a higher process. It's a higher relationship with the Lord. But does Hanuman all of a sudden go and start sitting with Ram and start joking with him in that way? No, because Hanuman is perfectly and completely happy with his relationship with Ram. And he wouldn't dream of changing it. Right? So he is perfectly happy because it is perfect. He knows that something else may be more perfect, but it doesn't change anything for him. So the same thing for us, if we see other processes of devotional service that other followers might be following, as long as it's in line with pure devotional service, as long as it's in line with developing love of God, we shouldn't think that it's anything less than. It's just that in our line, what are we looking for? Pleasing the Lord. And so we look for what's the most pleasing to the Lord. And whatever's the most pleasing to the Lord, that's what we're going to do. And so the relationship he has in Vrindavan is the most pleasing to him. And so we strive to get to that level. That's very simple that way, when you think of it in that way. Right? It's not a fight. It's not a competition with other religions. It's not a fight between other people. Oh, I want to be a Saki. Oh, you want to be a Gopa. You're lower. No, we're not even anywhere close that we can speculate what we want to be. Right? We simply are all striving to please the Lord. And until we can get to that level, we must be very careful to follow the process of sadhana bhakti. Because then slowly through the process of devotional service, as described in this purport, right, we can gradually come to the level where we can understand the Lord, His activities, His pastimes, His names, His forms, His qualities. And what's very interesting is in the purport, Prabhupada points out, right, after chanting the holy name of the Lord and dancing in ecstasy, one gradually sees the form of the Lord and pastimes of the Lord and the transcendental qualities of the Lord. He puts dancing in ecstasy. Are we dancing in ecstasy? Are we dancing in hesitation? Right? We always see dancing a little bit, not sure, is someone watching, is someone looking at me? How are they looking at me? Am I dancing cool enough? Right? I know for myself, I'm speaking about how I think, what I'm thinking when I dance. Right? There's no ecstasy there. There's no chanting in ecstasy. Chanting and dancing in ecstasy. So Prabhupada is speaking about a very high level. We're thinking, I'm chanting and dancing every day. How come I'm not realizing the form of the Lord? No, Prabhupada is talking about ruchi, bhava. We have a long way to go before we get there. So we must have faith, right? Shraddha. We must begin the process at some point and have faith that we're going to get there through gradual process. And we must not take any of these points that Prabhupada is giving for granted. None of the points that we hear we should take for granted. Yes, I've heard that before. Yes, I've understood that. Did you understand it? Did you understand you're not this body? Did you understand that this material world is a place of suffering? We haven't even begun to understand that. Prabhupada very clearly in the purports, right? He says, material existence, this is the purport to Savai Pumsam Parodharmo, right? I think this is Srimad Bhagavatam 2:4 something, right? He says, material existence is temporary, illusory, and full of misery. There is no happiness at all. Final. No question, comment, nothing, right? There is just the futile attempt to get rid of miseries, and the temporary cessation of miseries is falsely called happiness. This point is brought up again and again and again. The temporary cessation of misery. The analogy was given one time, I forgot who gave it, but I always find it so perfect. It's that if you have a knife in your thigh, right? A knife in your thigh, you're not thinking about anything else but to take it out. And when you take it out, so happy. You wait 2 seconds and all of a sudden the wound is hurting. Right? First you take it out and you think, oh, I'm so happy. But now the wound is hurting. Then you need to fix the wound. Then you fix the wound, so happy. Right? And then you have pain inside the leg. And then you get rid of the pain and something else happens, another knife. Right? It just never ends. And you experience it if you've ever been to India, 45 degree outside, you're walking on the hot pavement and you go in a nice AC room. That happiness is amazing. Just sit there. Ecstasy. 2 minutes. Then, some cold water would be nice. Then you drink some cold water, and then, I'm starting to feel like chilly because I'm covered in sweat. Then you have to go change your t-shirt. Then you change your t-shirt, then I need a sweater. Then after a sweater, next day, you're sick because of the quick change between hot and cold water. It's just one thing after another, and this happens again and again and again. So the temporary experience of misery is mistaken for happiness. You're hungry, you're not hungry anymore, you're happy. Right? This is complete illusion. And so Prabhupada says such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. There was this story Matata Prabhu tells that he was describing in a class of Prabhupada. Prabhupada was speaking about the same point, the temporary happiness in this material world and how material enjoyment is actually suffering. And so Prabhupada, he raised his arm and he pulled his sleeve back and he said, you feel itching, so you scratch and you feel some satisfaction. And then Prabhupada raised his arm again and said, you scratch more, you feel more satisfaction. And then Prabhupada did a third time. He said, you scratch more, then you stop. Not because you're satisfied, but because blood comes, right? So you think, oh yeah, I'm getting satisfaction. Oh, so nice, so nice. And then blood, right? And then you have a whole new problem to deal with. It increases its duration. Then you have a new problem to deal with. First you think, okay, I'm going to satisfy this urge I have. You give it a little bit of attention. It wants more. You give more attention. And all of a sudden you have an addiction. Then you need to deal with that. And it's a whole other problem. Right? So it's just one thing after another in this material world. So when we really understand that, we're liberated. So did we really understand that this material world is a place of suffering? And there's no enjoyment for us here. No. So even the simplest points that we heard on day one when we came to the temple, or when we went to our first Bhagavatam class or Bhagavad Gita class, that a new bhakta told us on our first day, we haven't understood. So we shouldn't take anything for granted and treat everything that we hear in any purport of Srila Prabhupada as if we're hearing it for the first time. And think about it as if we're hearing it for the first time. And try to realize it with such desperation, because we know what the ultimate goal is, and we realize how far we are. Does that make sense? So coming back to the point of this whole story that we're going through, I was listening to a class by Devamrita Maharaj talking about the pastime of Ajamil. And it comes to that same point that we're thinking. When we hear the pastime of Ajamil, we think he's chanted the name of Narayana one time, and he went back to Godhead. So what does it make you feel when you hear this pastime? Too easy, right? Oh, I'm done then. I'm going to name my sons and my daughters names of Krishna. I'm going to, put Krishna's names everywhere on my walls. I can do whatever I want my whole life, and I will just say the name when I die and done. Right? We think that, okay, then I'm done. I'm set. No need to go for Bhagavatam class, no need to chant rounds, no nothing. It'll be good. Right? But that is not the purpose of the story. The purpose of the story is to think that if for Ajamil he chanted one time, not even thinking about the glories of the holy name and with true love in his heart, and he got such benefit, then for us we must also try our best so that we are able to go directly back to Godhead. Because what did Ajamil have to do? After the fight between the Yamadutas and the Vishnu Dutas, after seeing that whole thing, he came back to life, and then he dedicated himself. Right? Because he saw the truth. And so this is a wake-up call for us. That the holy name really does work. And we shouldn't take it for granted. And as described here, beginning with the chanting of the holy name, the process of devotional service, right? The holy name is all we need. So there, in this connection, Devamrita Maharaj, he told the pastime that he was doing Prabhupada's correspondence, writing it down, typing them out. And there was a devotee who brought up the point to Prabhupada that Srila Prabhupada everywhere describes the glories of prasadam. And how even if prasadam becomes contaminated or dirty or rotten, it's still supremely powerful, and so therefore we should eat it in any condition because it's transcendental. And Prabhupada's response was that yes, prasadam is transcendental, but are you transcendental when you're eating it? Because if you're not transcendental, the Lord may not assist you in your digestion of such transcendental prasadam. Right? Because why are you eating it? Are you eating it because, wow, this is prasadam? Or are you eating it because it's a gulab jamun from 1 week ago that you wish you had, and now you found it, and now you have to have it? Right? The same with the Maha Mantra. The Maha Mantra is all we need. We have a cough, we can chant. We have a headache, we can chant. We have mental disorders that we need therapy for. No, I just chant. But you're not at that level yet. So you're trying to do everything to help yourself get to that level. And that's why we have so many other things. That's why we have so many other things we do in a day. Yes, if you could only chant all day and surrender to the holy name, perfect. You don't need anything else. But because we're not there yet, we have the process of sadhana bhakti. Basically, everything to get us up to ruchi and bhava is sadhana bhakti, trying to get us there. So until you have taste and pure ecstasy, everything else you have to work. You have to work through to get there. Yeah? So the point that Prabhupada is bringing up in this verse, devotional service, beginning with chanting of the holy name, right? That is the process in which we will understand the Lord. So we cannot take anything for granted. And we have to, when we hear something, hear submissively through the culture of learning, as Prabhupada points out, and really try to understand everything, because we take too much for granted. Also, yesterday I was listening to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he was talking about how he was describing to Prabhupada the program for a festival. And he was saying we'd have lecture, we'd have kirtan, and then everyone will eat prasad. And Prabhupada corrected him, no, you don't eat prasad, you respect prasad. Just that small point was so meaningful to Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He said, yes, it's true. We don't just think eat prasad. We shouldn't think in that way. We respect prasad. So every day we're eating prasad. Eating prasad, you see? Are we respecting prasad? Maybe 1 second out of every meal, that would be very good. I would say that would be a very high standard for us, or for me at least. If I could get 1 second out of every meal where I think, wow, Krishna is so merciful. He's come as this prasadam to satisfy the tongue, which is the most difficult urge. That would be a very amazing life that I would be living. So we can strive to once a week, 1 second once a week, 1 second once a month, that when I sit for prasad, I'll think about, wow, this is amazing. Yeah, so don't take anything for granted, because even the very beginning things we have not understood, even to a little bit. Yeah, I can speak for myself foremost. Even the basic things we heard it all. Sometimes devotees come to me and say, wow, Prabhu, you know so much. And I say, yeah, I've heard everything. Sitting in Bhagavatam class since I was 5 years old. I've heard everything, but I have realized very little. So I can speak wonderfully, amazing things, but what actually sticks is probably, point 0.00000000. Yeah? So please, don't take it for granted. Listen to everything as if you've heard it as for the first time. And try understand. Yeah? Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Any questions or comments or corrections, please? Yes, sir. Wonderful question, Prahu. For me, what I sometimes try to do, I'm not trying to say I do this all the time, because I don't. Growing up in the movement, we have the know-it-all syndrome, and it's very, very strong. I've heard it all, I've seen it all, I've heard it from much more advanced devotees than you, Prabhu. I've heard it from Javatak Maharaj and Indran Maharaj and Bhakti Chara Swami. So it doesn't even register. But what I do now when I'm reading, especially starting for a class, you try find meaning to everything that's there. And so when you're reading something, when you're hearing something, you can note it down, you can look for references describing it more, talking about it more. Like this point that came here, that only by devotional service can one understand Krishna. I was thinking, where's the points to describe? Where does Prabhupada give more purports on this point? And there's millions, obviously. But then I started thinking about what does it mean to understand Krishna? And I was like, wow, I don't know what it means to understand Krishna. I always thought I knew what it means, but why does Prabhupada put in the purport that then you understand how he takes birth? I know how he took birth. I know how he took all his births. So what does he mean by that? And still, I'm thinking about it. Like, how? What does it mean? Like, what will change when you understand how he took birth? It doesn't make sense to me still, and I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to think about it, and I'm going to read more about it. So something like that's even just a footnote or a part that when you think about it, even just a little bit, then it raises so many questions. And so when you think about, I'm not this body, for example, like Shatadanya Prabhu was saying, what would change when we really realize that? And, that's when you become a self-realized soul. So what would that look like? And those are the same questions that Arjuna posed up. What does such a person look like? How does he act? What does he do? What does he like to do? Right. So I think at the beginning, Prabhu would just start with one question, one class, one question. Or when you hear something that you've heard many times, stop and think, did I actually understand that? Is there something more to that question that I haven't asked or thought about? It's in cooking sometimes I always give examples, but in cooking sometimes we take things for granted. You have to do it a certain way. Why do you have to do it in that way? Why can't you do it a different way? What special thing does it change when you grate the ginger or when you make a paste with the ginger? What flavor is the difference? Why is it different, the flavor? And when you understand why is it different, then you can think, okay, well, does that work also with spices? If I dry roast the spices, or if I blend the spices, does it give a different flavor? Yes. Wow, that's amazing. What if I did it with vegetables? If I cut the vegetable this big or this big, does it make a difference? Yes. Why? Right? So we take so many things for granted, and if we take everything for granted, you're never going to learn how to cook. Because then it's just you'll make one sabji, and that's it. Right? But if you can apply the principle to so many other things, everything starts making sense. So with the simple things that we hear, if we start thinking about it little bit by little, one question by one question, then we'll come closer to really understanding it. Just practice makes perfect, I think, Prahu. Mataji was first.
How could you explain how there can be different kinds of
Okay.
perfect?
So there's different kinds of perfect based on what Krishna enjoys the most. We think that it's based off of some enjoyment that we get. And you think about it. When you think about the Gopas, right, what activities do they do with Krishna? Okay, that's pretty fun. But the Gopis have all these secret dealings with Krishna, and that seems the most fun. But you're thinking of it in relation to ourselves, right? We think about the 5 rasas in relation to ourselves. What would bring us the most happiness? It's the opposite. What gives Krishna the most happiness? But am I the perfect person to interact with him in that way? No, that means I have a lot of work to do. Does that make more sense? So Krishna enjoys his love with the gopis the highest. And above them, Srimati Radharani. And so like that, the five rasas with the Lord, right? Shanta ras, Dasi ras, Vatsali ras, Sakya ras, Madhurya ras. Those rasas are in that order because that's what brings Krishna the most pleasure. So that's the categorizing of perfect, more perfect, most perfect. But we always think of it in reverse, that what's better, pasta, pizza, or lasagna, and what I like more and what So you're thinking about it in that way. Oh, Gopa Ras, I would like that, but it's not about us. I always go back, in my Guru Maharaj actually always goes back to Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri there's 3 people in the universe that can fully understand Mahabhav, who actually experience Mahabhav, the greatest feelings of separation and ecstasy. And that's Srimati Radharani, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Madhavendra Puri, right? 3 people in the entire spiritual material creation. And what is Madhavendra Puri in the spiritual world? Desire tree. A tree. Right? He's not Saki. He's not a Gopa. He's not one of the parents. He's not one of the gopis, the manjaris or anything. He's a desire tree. And he is experiencing Mahabhav. So our complete concept of, what we would enjoy more, we have no idea. He is enjoying the highest, enjoying is the wrong word, but he's relishing the highest love of God as a desire tree. So we have to come to the point where we can be so pure that whatever Krishna wants to interact with us and our eternal relationship with Krishna will fulfill that. But we have to become qualified for that. So this idea of perfect, more perfect, most perfect is to do with Krishna's enjoyment of the relationships that he has with the different devotees. But it's not in relation to what we would enjoy more, if that makes sense. It's not about us at all. And we have to drill that into our heads again and again and again. Because you hear about Vrindavan pastimes and immediately you'd be, oh, that would be fun for me. That would be cool for me. I would like to see that. Rather than, wow, that's so cool, Krishna is doing that. He must be having so much fun. Right? But how can he have fun without me? Right? Yeah, it's completely messed up our way of thinking. It's always self-centered. But it's perfect, more perfect, most perfect. Krishna enjoys it more. And we see that in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. He goes through all the different until he gets to Srimati Radharani. Yeah? Yes, that's.
I heard from Prabhupada that our movement is actually not a religion but a science.
Yes.
And that's why I have the question, is it makes sense to try to understand the scriptures, the stories in the scientific way? Yes, because it's, and when not, then in which way we need to understand it? Because there are a lot of some misunderstanding in my head, for example, with astrology. So scriptures say one, the material science says another thing. So how we can we combine it? Should we combine it?
It would only be useful to combine it if you are trying to clarify it for you. Let's say you have interest in astrology and you would like to learn more, and that's getting in the way of you learning something about, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and it's getting in your head and you want to see how it's connected to Krishna. Right? So then, yeah, you could study some more about that, understand how it's connected to Krishna, and understand how it can be used in Krishna's service. But eventually you will come to the point where you understand that it's actually irrelevant because it's all parts of the process going back to Godhead, right? But it's getting in the way because it's keeping us to do with this material world. The planets, as soon as you become a devotee, they completely change their effect to you. It's almost 180 degrees. My father's an astrologer. He tells me this all the time. Right? We cannot underestimate the amount of effect that becoming a devotee has on a chart. There's nothing that can quantify the difference. Yeah, so as soon as someone becomes a devotee, the way that astrologers or qualified astrologers look at the chart is completely different. Someone else will say, oh, you're going to lose all your possessions. You have to be very careful and save. A devotee will say, oh, Prabhu, congratulations, you're going to lose all your possessions and you're going to get more attracted to Krishna. And then you see that person joined the temple. Haribol! He doesn't have a car, doesn't have a house, doesn't have a bank account, doesn't have anything. Everything that was important to him all of a sudden isn't important to him. To a material astrologer, that's, what happened to this person? Maybe he has to go to jail or something. They see that this is happening. Oh, maybe he's going to go to jail. Something bad is going to happen. He's going to lose everything. But to devotee, he went to the temple. He became a new bhakta. He surrendered to the temple. Congratulations. It's the opposite. One is jail and one is ashram. It makes sense? So if you have an interest in this and you want to learn about it to fulfill your desire, of course you can. But that's still, that's to fulfill your desire to know more about that specific subject. And then going into your other question about science, yes, the process of devotional service is a science by which we get in contact with Krishna. There's a process. It's not just trial and error. Manuel can, chant a different mantra and I chant Maha Mantra and both of us will have the same. No, there's a science. You chant certain mantra, you wake up at a certain time, you come to the temple, you talk with devotees, right? There's the process of devotional service because it's a science by which we get in contact with Krishna, by which we connect yoga, bhakti yoga, connection with the Lord. Right? So yes, Prabhupada says we're not a religion, we're a science. Because it works. Because it's not just something that it's a lifestyle you live and you can continue doing the same thing. Prabhupada points out in the purports that the churches, the mosques, all of them are empty. Because people aren't seeing the purpose in it anymore. So it's a science. And it's not that we look at it with this scientific method, the trial and error method. You prove something by trying it. Yes, you try devotional service earnestly, but it's not that you come one day, wave an incense at the Lord and expect all of a sudden $1 million in your bank account, and because it didn't work, it doesn't work. Make sense? Yeah, so that's why Prabhupada said it's beyond the experimental method. Yeah, you have to do it with pure desire. Yeah? Yeah, any other part of that question you have?
Yes, actually I meant materialistic sciences or finances. So like I heard, for example, that in the scriptures we can read that the sun and the moon they are the same distance from the planet Earth, but in the our material science, from material point of view, it's actually not like that. So how we can understand it, how we can combine it?
There's many devotee scientists, yeah, who wrote many books on this subject and show the difference. This devotee Sariputta Prahu, he made an amazing presentation in books describing the correlation between Vedic cosmology and material cosmology, and how it is because of our impurity that we're perceiving the universe in a certain form. For example, we only see the world as round because we're not pure enough to see more than that, right? It's flat. I say it for certain, right? But we cannot see it that way because we're not pure enough. And there's so many stories that prove that, so many experiences that prove that. But to someone who doesn't want to know, he will never know. Right? So if you're interested in that, yeah, you can ask for so many books by different devotee scientists. Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, he was an amazing scientist. He made many amazing books showing the correlation, not only with cosmology, with everything, biology, geography, all these different things, showing the correlation between what the scientists believe to be right and how, yes, it is, but in one small part, because they're seeing through a small hole in the door of what actually is. Does that make sense? So there is a way to understand it, and there's so many books, and it's very clear. But for that, same process you have to follow. Serve, inquisitive, right? Submissive, and then find out. Of course there is. But in the same, all those books were made to help people who have that certain desire to understand those things come to Krishna consciousness. So what's the end goal? Come to Krishna consciousness. It's not through that you'll become a devotee. Does that make sense? But if for you have that interest, go for it. But don't drop any of the other things you're doing. Yeah? Any other questions or comments? We're already past. Yes, Ramananda.
I just had, was thinking when you said about Madhavendra Puri, that he is in the spiritual world at the Sire tree, how this is amazing because at the Sire tree is only up to service. So, there's not even a tinge of enjoyment because you're at the Sire tree, so you're only there to serve others, and I think that's what we really, well, I myself have a hard time really grasp that the spiritual world is for service, because we still have this Christian conception that we go there to enjoy.
Yeah.
This Islamic, we have so many virgins there,
Yeah.
but that's completely out of our understanding.
Yeah.
But still sometimes we have this, when I'm back home, then I will eat with Krishna, and
Yeah.
but actually it's about us.
Yeah, it's all about us. Thank you, Prahu. It's absolutely right. And we have to remind ourselves again and again and again, whenever we think about the spiritual world, whenever we think of Krishna's pastimes, we should always think in the scope, wow, Krishna must be enjoying this so much. Or, wow, those devotees are so surrendered, they're pleasing Krishna in such an amazing way. Right? And then we can be reminded of the rasa dance. As soon as the gopis began to think that I am enjoying with Krishna, Krishna disappeared. And until they got to the platform where they're thinking, wow, Radharani is pleasing Krishna in such an amazing way. Look how she's suffering when Krishna disappeared. Her feeling of separation is millions of times greater than mine. She must be the greatest devotee. Only then did Krishna appear again. So we think of everything in relation to us always, and it's very difficult for us to even grasp the concept of the spiritual world. Because we can't. It's just like Bhishma Dev, right? He's in a Vaikuntha planet where he's eternally fighting with the Lord. Eternally. There's an eternal Kurukshetra happening there, and he's seeing Krishna fight, and he's fighting with Arjuna. Why? Because Krishna enjoys it. He's doing it because Krishna wants it, because that's his relationship with the Lord, and that's his service that he can offer to the Lord. But you think, whenever we think, oh, he must be enjoying it. No, Krishna's enjoying it, and that's why he's doing it. So it's the opposite of everything we think. Everyone's Vaikuntha, they're serving the Lord. Why? Because Krishna's enjoying it, and they're offering their little bit of service. I forgot who told me. Anyway, there was in a class, and they were describing, Prabhupada also points it out many times, that Krishna is missing the particular service that you can render as a jiva. Only you. Only you can offer that particular flavor of service to Krishna. Right? And so Krishna is missing that relationship with you. Right? But it's about him missing his enjoyment, not about us, that I'm going to give that. Yes, Ramananda Prabhu.
But how is it then when, we do devotional service and sometimes we enjoy it? Let's say we enjoy cooking, because it's our nature, we enjoy daily worship, book distribution, whatever. How do we know that Krishna enjoys it and it's not just about us?
You know the answer, bro. If the devotees are pleased. If the devotees are pleased, then Krishna is pleased. That comes up again and again. Chaitanya Charitamrita comes up again and again. Chaitanya Bhagavat comes up again and again. That only if the devotees are pleased, then is Krishna pleased. So if you're not sure if you're pleasing the Lord, you should see the devotees around you if they're pleased by your service. And therefore you can get a more immediate and definite answer to your service. And if you see that some are pleased, some are not pleased, then you might think that maybe my service, my attitude is superficial, right? On the surface, I'm acting as such a nice devotee and serving, but some devotees are seeing what actually I'm about, and so therefore I must purify what's there underneath. You'll notice it right away. And if you're a little bit attentive, you'll see the difference. You'll see some devotees, some not so much. And you shouldn't think, oh, they're not pure, that's why they don't see the quality of my service. No, it's not like that at all. It's not like that. They're just a mirror of what's in your heart. So if you're seeing faults, you have faults. If you're seeing they're not pleased, means that something you're doing is wrong. Yeah. So you can constantly strive for perfection in devotional service. Yes, Prahu.
But is the how to say, that we say, oh, they are the advanced devotees, they are pleased. I only have to please the certain class of devotees because they are new, they're new bhaktas, they don't know.
No.
I don't have to bother with them.
Yeah, that's a very Kanishta Adhikari way of thinking, right? Thinking that it's me and Krishna, and there's nothing else in between, right? Me, Guru, Krishna. Everyone else is also Kanishta Adhikari like me. Everyone else is also nonsense like me.
No, temple president.
Temple president as well, yeah. Temple president, head pujari, Krishna. Guru, Krishna, right? No, that's not the way it works. There's that book, I think, by Jadakumar, it's Vaishnava Ki, right? What is a Vaishnava? And there's so many places we hear in the pastimes of Mahaprabhu that someone will say the Mahamantra once, and Haridas Thakur or different people fall at their lotus feet, right? Lotus feet, right? So we shouldn't be the ones to judge, oh, only them I have to please, everyone else doesn't matter. If there's someone in your community, someone in your circle who's displeased with your service, it's for a reason. And either you offended them, you've done something wrong, or they see some fault in your service. You can go to them, ask submissively, Prabhu, what am I doing wrong? Mataji, what am I doing wrong? Please tell me so I can improve. Please tell me how I'm displeasing you. And then if there is something there, fix it. Clarify it. There shouldn't be within a community misgivings, problems in this way. And you see for me personally, I was thinking about it just yesterday, funny enough, that after a festival, I see the mood change. And I see that people, different devotees, have some tension because of during the festival, the stress, the problems, the tension, some words might have been said in a harsh way that didn't need to be. And now again, we need to work on fixing that, on clarifying that, on making sure there isn't any problems so they don't fester and get worse. And therefore it can become a nice, strong community, as it always is. But if there is something there, fix it. Clarify it. Don't let it sit. One of the many reasons. Yeah. Okay, we'll finish there. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitaya Gaura Premanandi.